Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And it's Wednesday, and I have with me again today the lovely Simone Anderson. Not usually on a Wednesday, but today she is. And I do apologize. I seem to have had some glitches in my matrix here with sound and stuff, but I hope we're okay. So if there's any sound issues, if you guys can just let me know. But I think I want to just quickly pop up the schedule for the week. So just give me a moment. I want to just make sure I've got the right one. And then we can go through that. Yeah, it's this one here. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to pop up the weekly schedule because I wasn't able to do it earlier this week. So Miles Johnston was on Monday. He was speaking about the Basis Project and a lot of the very interesting people that he is hosting in the UK. So check that out. And if you're there, you can get your bum on a seat and support these amazing survivors and whistleblowers. I mean, my word, some of these people, what they've been through is quite amazing. And then, of course, we had the recording on Monday night of Simone speaking about Islam, understanding Islam. Again, very, very interesting topic. And I want to highly recommend, if you guys haven't watched my earlier interviews with Simone, it's a whole series. She's with me in the back room, going to be chatting again. And a very, very well-researched political historian and really knows what's happening, I want to say, in the nuts and bolts of the underbelly of the world. And yes, we were supposed to have Asia Rain on last night, but unfortunately, Asia, like I was a few weeks ago, has been hit by no power. So we were not able to get Asia last night, but I will reschedule that show. So watch the space. Jessie is away again this week. So there was a rerun earlier of the shows, of one of our earlier shows that was on Solutions. And that was actually with Marion Altena. And they really are, Jessie and Marion are very, very good at decoding the way the system has built the buildings and the churches and stuff like that. So that's super interesting. Yes, tomorrow, meet me in the field, and we're going to be talking on the protection patterning series. We're talking about week 10, the avoidant loop. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. And then, of course, Drop In with Shanti on Friday. Very interesting documentary I'm going to be watching. And then hopefully with you guys, hopefully. So join me. And then Leo Zagami, hopefully Friday evening as well for our monthly show with him. And then, of course, on Sunday, the Sunday Loop, where we do reruns of the earlier shows for those of you who like to watch them again and or haven't seen them before. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Nice to see you. I know. I am guilty as charged. I've cocked up times. I don't know. I was just having glitches with my mic and had to restart my laptop and all sorts of things. But hey, we're here. And so is Simone. Welcome. How are you, honey?
Oh, hello. And hello to everyone out there in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and around the world. It's a beautiful morning here in Northern California. We got a little bit of spring rain, but otherwise, everybody's out in the fields and the crops are going to be coming in. All the trees have bloomed, and it's a beautiful life here in Northern California.
Yeah, I mean, you always are sitting there, and that, as I said, that where you sit reminds me so much of Africa, you know, like under a lapa. I mean, it's really like such a typical African scene there. So I feel right at home chatting to you.
Yeah, even the cabana, right? Because people have a lot of kind of awnings. I've never been to South Africa, but I've seen a lot of movies and a lot of pictures. And I did work in the mining business, so I saw, you know, not just Johannesburg, I saw the rest of the country because that's where the mines are.
Well, Johannesburg is funny. biggest city, but it's not the capital city, and it is the mining capital.
Yes.
And it's very interesting because it's actually quite a beautiful city. It has the fourth largest amount of trees in the center of Johannesburg, or it had. I'm not sure if it still does, right? But so when you look at it, and especially Pretoria as well, the purple jacarandas, when it's like spring and summer and those jacarandas bloom, that entire city is purple. The roads are purple. The trees are purple.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It really, really is beautiful. And especially when you're having the aerial view. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, very, very, well, I know you've been to Africa. I didn't know you've been to South Africa. So you should come and visit. You should come and
Yes,
visit.
I would love to come visit. Definitely. That's on my bucket list. And before we get started today, I know we focus a lot on what's going on human trafficking and all this, but I just want people to know the reason I'm doing this is because we first have to see reality before we can address reality. And
Yeah.
I see a brighter, happier, successful future for us. We just have to overcome. It says in the Bible, we were blind, but now we see. And really, I feel that's where we're at. And we've talked about the word apocalypse that literally means the unveiling. So we're living in a time that we're very lucky to be living in because the deception is being lifted and we're able to see the world as it truly is. We can love somebody who pretends to be one way, but they're not really letting us, they're not really showing us who they are so we can really love them for who they are. And that's kind of how the world is, right? If we can't
and that's really, it's so interesting because on my solutions channel, I'm doing the protection patterning series, and it really speaks to exactly what you're saying. We're all born into a narcissistic world. Let's be honest. I mean, our parents and our grandparents are all products of the war. And how on earth, and up until the 60s, if you were deemed to have anything mentally, emotional issues, you were locked up in an asylum and you were shamed. So there was no such thing as mental help back then to support women in depression, to support women whose husbands had been killed in the war. And more we're hearing, for example, these disgusting acts that were passed, like the Lunacy Act, where a woman, if her husband, and this is with Guy Anderson, like on some of his shows, if you guys haven't heard those. But if a woman's husband was killed in the war, she would, under the Lunacy Act, she was then locked up in an asylum because she was deemed unfit to take care of her children. And then the system took the kids and did whatever they wanted. And then we're looking at the orphan trains and all of that. It's absolutely horrific what's been going on.
War is based on a huge part of war and why the Romans and those before them financed war, because slaves, children and women are taken, the men are killed, and sometimes the men are taken too. But even like the growth of the Mormon church here in the United States was based on killing the men. That church has a very distressing background, and it's really hard because I know a lot of Mormon people here. California, we have a big population and they're such nice people, but you look at the history of their church and you're just like, how did these get involved? But a lot of it, like for instance, they were taking money from the US government for MK Ultra mind control programs before the Nazis came over to the United States. So we've had these elements in that, and the children and the women are always the target.
Well, the Mormon church forms, according to what Jesse has been telling us, one of the 5 pillars of the Illuminati. And when we're listening to Beverly Rhodes's interviews as well, who was a vampire nanny when she was a kid, the Mormon church is one of the churches that actually hosts and houses the vampires, because the story that she was told about the vampires, that whatever, it's a long story, I don't want to go into that because it detracts, but the Mormon church was housing them, the vampires. And of course the vampires carry on.
I was going to say, if we understand who the monarchy of Europe today is, because they all married Queen Victoria's children, they're all married in, and that's Vlad the Impaler, who is also named Dracula. So these things go back much further, and the fact that this is what the fallen angels are, these different categories that people have them in. And if you notice, this week they announced in the Congress of the United States that there are aliens living on our planet. And they are opening the window with CERN and with all those things, because I don't believe they're aliens. They're either interdimensional or they're, spirits of the fallen.
Yeah, they're dodgy ones. They're little dodgy ones.
Okay, well, today we're going to talk about Epstein Maxwell. You and I could talk forever. I'm definitely coming to South Africa to
talking about dodgy ones. Yes, we'll be spending 3 days and 3 nights talking for sure. But the most dodgy of dodgy would certainly be Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein. But we know that from our conversations with you, why he's been called Epstein as well. So again, thank you. I want to just say thank you for joining me and sharing this knowledge, because wow, your information is amazing. And I want to just ask everyone, like, share, subscribe, please. Get this information out, get our algorithms up. This is truly the information that we need to be dissecting. When we look at this, we understand we've had when I started, we had this whole, and still is, the survivors.
We're having a little interference there.
Oh, still. Oh, my word. Okay. I just want to say, we first had the survivors speaking out, and so many of us were horrifically appalled by what was going on. And now we're starting to understand the system that has abused the survivors and how the system actually functions and who functions it behind the scenes. And that's so tragic, because now we're getting into the deeper workings of, as we're saying, the nuts and the bolts of this depraved system. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate you. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Okay, well, this is a really complex topic, and one of the reasons we've been covering Admiralty Law, the Vatican, the financial system, and I've tried to show everybody that there is this system, and this is the whole world lives in this system in some way or another. And in order to keep this system in place, they have to have an enforcement arm, because a lot of people do a deal with the devil, and then when it comes time to pay the piper, they don't want to. And actually, they're not terrible people, right? Really deep down, they may have done something, but they're dragged into this, and they use blackmail and extortion. So literally, this is a chapter from a book that I'm writing. I'm just going to kind of go through it with you. There's a lot more information, because every day, if you look into these people, it's so insane. I mean, they were at Harvard, they were at Yale, you name it. They are in every aspect of academia, medicine, politics, international politics, the United Nations, the New World Order, Chatham House. You name it, these people are involved. So the name of the chapter is Epstein, Maxwell, and Friends, and they blackmail everyone who is anyone, allegedly. Okay. So uncovering the epic saga. I have to throw that in.
Yeah, right.
Uncovering the epic saga of the intelligence operatives, Epstein and Maxwell, highlighting their connection to the people who rule the world and us. So I'm going to get this a little bit bigger here. Okay, so let us review some important details about the saga that has unfolded before the public view over the last several years. Are the Epstein-Maxwell arrests really an international scandal prompted by sexual predators taking advantage of young, poor women? Are the sexually charged stories and the famous names in Epstein's Black Book really the most interesting aspects of the drama being played out in the media and the courtrooms? This worldwide scandal has been in every newspaper and broadcast for years. Rich guys sleeping with teenage girls. Epstein and Maxwell have been accused and reported to the FBI and other authorities for the same behavior since the last century. So why now, and why have none of the other people involved in this scandal been arrested to date, even though people have been sent to prison for child trafficking? If they were trafficking children, then who was buying them? The salacious stories about Epstein needing 3 women a day and Ghislaine helping him because they were best buds just does not add up. To understand who these people are and how their activities affected the rest of the world's population, we must go back to the last century. The origin of their generational power is derived from blackmail, extortion, theft, murder, rape, insurrection, and treason. Ghislaine is a Harvard-educated helicopter and submarine pilot who speaks 4 languages. She was born to privilege, and according to the American mainstream media, she arrived broke and shamed by her father's crimes when she arrived in the New York social scene. But apparently this did not hold her back from socializing with the who's who of the American elite, including Governor Bloomberg. And now he's the governor of New York for people who don't know. And he also owns Bloomberg News. He's a powerful elite family. Contrary to media reports, Maxwell and Epstein did not meet in New York City, but years earlier through Maxwell's father. In an interview in July 2020, and I don't know if many people watch this show, Sean Atwood, he's got a great show out of England. That guy puts out several shows a day and he gets amazing interviews. So if you want to go watch the Ari Ben-Menashe, a former Israeli military intelligence officer who served from 77 to 87 and who worked with Robert Maxwell during his years at the military agency. Ari was responsible for the Israel-Iran policy. And so I'm sure with this coming up today, I'm going to find out some more about the Israel-Iran policy, because that stuff's going to be unfolding as the Iran situation comes to a close. Some may remember Menashe's testimony in front of Congress during the events of the Iran-Contra controversy. Menashe was also put on trial in Israel, where he was later acquitted because they were trying to force him to comply with the lies they were telling. Maxwell's sisters both have interesting career paths too. So Ghislaine has 2 twin sisters, Christine and Isabel, and together they created a software that works on the intelligence databases of the FBI, CIA, and DEA. And let's remember, it's the CIA and the DEA who were involved in the drug smuggling and the child trafficking. So we literally have 2 of the daughters of a Mossad spy, Robert Maxwell, working as spies for U.S. intelligence agencies and providing software to the FBI to help with espionage, while the younger sister is a massive sex trafficker and has been recently captured by the FBI. So there's still some confusion about Ghislaine Maxwell, where she really is. Her prisoner numbers don't align with the prison system in New York. So that's a whole other story. But Ghislaine Maxwell, I believe, was a spy, and she may not even be in prison. They've probably done some kind of trade, but that's a different story for a different day. And so the twins are credited with being co-creators of the Magellan Company that is now owned by Excite. And if you remember, Bill Gates denies knowing the Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell family, but he was personally invested in the original company that Isabel was president of, and that was called ComTouch. And it's an Israeli internet company. And now if you want to look it up, it's Cyren, and that's C-Y-R-E-N. And she is listed as a technology pioneer by the World Economic Forum. So Ghislaine has a charity, and apparently Ghislaine's life goal is to save the ocean. And she ran her Terramar charity out of Epstein's New York apartment. The foundation was funded by the Clinton Foundation money. She also created, with Google developers, to create a submarine program that allowed navigation to go undetected by regular boat programs. So this is kind of interesting. She's supposed to be a socialite, but she's helping Google design submarine programs that allow navigation to go undetected. I mean, that doesn't seem like something that most people would want unless they were something nefarious or they were working for a foreign government. Funny that a woman who refers in depositions to the poor woman she preys on as, this is a direct quote from a 2015 lawsuit, "They are trash and they do not matter," has so much concern for the ocean. Could it be that when you're living on the ocean that you're under maritime or admiralty law and not the rules of the land, the rules of the captain, where people are dead cargo and have no rights? And if anyone wants to go back to the interview that I did a few weeks ago, it goes into in-depth explaining what I'm talking about, maritime or admiralty law. So let's understand who the key players around the Ghislaine Maxwell episode are. And there's definitely an indication that this is an international web of crime, allegedly. Media today would have most believe that the Epstein-Maxwell scandal is a shocking new revelation about the predator class and their propensity for sex with underage children. So why are they ignoring the generational saga that links Epstein and Maxwell to international intelligence agencies, presidents, governors, arms dealers, scientists, Ponzi schemes, war crimes, the British royals, Hollywood, and missing women and children worldwide since the 1970s? To understand who these people are and the entities they represent, we must go back to the last century. So I'm going to take a little break in case you had any questions.
I just find it interesting. You know, I've always said that, speaking about Ghislaine Maxwell, I didn't know, I mean, I knew she was supposedly a Mossad spy and stuff like that, with submarines, and daughter of Robert, that also famous Israeli spy. And I just find it interesting how it's like almost the woman they use. I'm trying to make a connection about the type of woman that they would use for these operations. So she no doubt would have also been groomed from the womb, right? This is not someone they just picked up along the way and she happened to have superior intelligence type thing. But it's like, I wonder, I don't quite even know what the question is, but it's like something in my mind. It's like, why her and why women? What is so specific about women in her position that she is, or is there anything about women specifically in these positions is rather, I guess, the question.
Okay, she's born into it. This is an ancient system of slavery and oppression. Mind control, like we've just been studying Islam, that's MK Ultra. The threats, the pain, the beating, the murder, the threat underneath. So this is the way that they kept power over because it's the priest class who's always ruled the world. Because as we get into this, the financial system and the world control is actually the Vatican. So they work for the Vatican system. You can see pictures of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein if you Google it, meeting with the Pope. They're both Jewish. Why are they meeting with the Pope? Because they're part of the Rothschild kind of, and if you look at Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell and you go back in time, they're also related to Vlad the Impaler. So they are related to the royal lines. And what happened in Europe is over time, they removed all of the true monarchy of Europe and they instilled what a lot of them were the Khazarians that were forced out of the Ukraine and Turkey and Russia. And they were forced out because their elite had been committing the crimes I'm just discussing. So this all goes back to Baal worship. It's kind of confusing to put it all in one place. But Maxwell himself is most likely, he was raised in this system. If you ever listen to Ghislaine, I've listened to Ghislaine Maxwell's nanny, and she was beaten every day. Her father would let her choose whether it was going to be a stick or a belt or a whip. And so these people are grown up in these systems to preserve the system, you see, because they have to destroy their minds and make them into pliable people for them to continue the system. I don't know what they say in Australia, but I used to work in England, and they used to say about the Americans, there's 3 generations from the plow to the plow, right? The first father is hardworking and he does well, and the second father is very successful and he achieves everything that no one had achieved for generations. And then his son is back to the plow because they never taught his son the system, how to really work, how to overcome hard times. So just as you can teach people to grow up in a positive system, you can teach them to grow up. And if you really go back, I believe a lot of this comes from the Book of the Dead that was uncovered by the Nazis. It was something old, but they've used the knowledge. And this is what they were used during the Pharaonic times to control not only the ruling class, but it's always been the military industrial complex and the priests that really run the countries. And we can see that today, both in South Africa and the United States, to see who's really running our government. So I want to show how this is generational, and that Robert Maxwell himself was probably raised in this same system. These people set goals that last hundreds of years, and there's people and families that are set in place to accomplish those things. And if they step out, they're, like you said, they're put in mental institutions, or they're just taken out. If you know, like right now with the Rothschild family, both the father and the heir are deceased. They had several helicopters blow up over their estate. The ex-wives, the one time the Rothschilds didn't marry their niece because generationally they've married their nieces. And that woman was found hanging and dead in her apartment in London a few years ago. So their estates are empty. So the system that we're seeing collapsing is what we call the cult of Phoenix. And I'm sure Jesse has gone into the cult of Phoenix, but the cult of Phoenix, you know, symbolized by the eagle. And we always see it on all the Roman stuff. We see it in Hollywood. We see it in the Vatican. We see it in the financial system. So right now that system is under collapse. And I want to believe that we're being, that these people are taking over and that we are getting rid of all the bad stuff. But when I consciously think about it, it's just a power struggle between the elite. That's why sometimes it seems like it has really nothing to do with us, because they're really struggling. They all have the same long-term goal, but they fight amongst each other. Bloodlines fight and power structures fight. So Maxwell came into the public eye in 1949 when he financed and run guns for the first Israel military. The United States and other countries declined to fund Israel's weapons purchases, and the fledgling country relied on Maxwell to raise the money for the first military. And really, how he ended up getting money for the rest of, and Israel continues to get money today, is because they are blackmailing our government, and they're blackmailing all the governments of the world. And Jeffrey and Ghislaine were just agents here in the United States. Because as we go through this report, I'm going to point out their counterparts in other countries like France and Canada. And of course, the guy in France mysteriously died in a high security prison committing suicide, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell.
Interesting. I want to just say about that. Not just after the Epstein files were released, one of South Africa's ambassadors to France, I do speak under correction, was in France at the time, and also he was mentioned in the Epstein files, and also fell down some very tall hotel building to his death. How interesting is that?
Well, and there's people in this group dying, going to prison. Children are dying, their spouses are dying, and that's another way to keep people in control. They're not going to kill the person who has the power. They're going to kill one of their children or one of their relatives. And even for them to get to the point they are, if they're one of the top movie stars or actors and actresses or musicians, they've already had to sacrifice somebody they loved in order. And today we see it, they're not sacrificing their children anymore. Like Charlize Theron, she has 4 children who don't know whether they're male or female. Will Smith's children don't know whether they're male or female. So instead of having somebody killed off, they're choosing this. My friend works in Hollywood, and a majority of successful stars in Hollywood today's children don't know what gender they are. So I understand that this is an issue that is being faced by some people, but the institutional forcing it on. And for some reason, all of a sudden, there's 100 major stars and none of their children. The girls are dressed, the boys are dressed in little girls' dresses. And I mean, really, this is child abuse as far as I'm concerned. Grown people are free to do what they want. But this is part of this system, and this is part of the deal they do with the devil. And ask Jesse, or I've talked to many MK Ultra and people who were trafficked into Hollywood, and this is a reoccurring theme. It's not my opinion. So I was actually working in London, in the city of London, during this time in 1991, and when Maxwell's naked body was found floating near his boat, and that's the Lady Ghislaine in 1991. Maxwell was a household name in Europe as head of the British media empire, and you may remember this. I don't know if it was reported in South Africa, but it was a pretty big international story. The official police statement reported that he committed suicide after bankrupting his newspaper and stealing the employee pension funds. And news reports of the time indicated his empire was built on a pyramid of debt that finally collapsed. And to this day, questions remain about where the employees' pension fund disappeared to, and if Maxwell was the only one responsible for bankrupting the media company. Not just a media mogul, Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a known intelligence agent, rumored to be a double and triple agent for the Mossad, British intelligence, the CIA, and Russian intelligence. He openly, during the Cold War, freely traveled between Britain, United States, and Russia, and was selling the Russians our secrets, and he was selling the British and the Americans the Russian secrets. His reputation and access to the world leaders was well publicized prior to his death, and Israel gave him a grand state funeral with at least 6 intelligence heads attending the service. So I'm going to explain a little bit about Robert Maxwell and the 5 Eyes. Now, the 5 Eyes is a name for the Allied intelligence agencies that have worked together since after World War II. And this is really when our government, from the Civil War in the United States to World War I and World War II, was an attack on the United States. Well, on Protestants, because the Catholic Church had lost control. So it was targeted to kill the Protestants in Europe and to take down the United States and bring it back into the British Empire under the Cecil Rhodes Plan. And that's a whole other story too. Our country did go bankrupt in 1999. It was open for capture. Our leaders knew that. And some private citizens stepped in and saved the country. Otherwise, we would be part of the British Commonwealth again today. And his plan, Cecil Rhodes' plan from 200 years ago, would have been complete.
I just want to ask you, when you say Cecil John Rhodes' plan, because of course he's well known on African turf, and we also know him to be one of the most evil connivers that there are. Honestly, every time there's a riot with the young people, and a couple of years back especially, anything to do with Cecil John Rhodes, the young African people, boy, they were destroying those statues and those memorials. So he's not very popular, yeah. But again, I want to say to you, when we talk about people like him, like Cecil John Rhodes, and even Epstein, as I've said before, and Maxwell too, to me, that's the face of a system. So when we talk about Cecil Rhodes, would it not be, he was obviously handled by, just like Epstein as well, obviously handled by some very powerful handlers, the same. Would that then be, again, the British Empire, right?
It would be the British Crown, which is the Vatican, the city of London, not the British people, right?
Yes.
So that would be The Admiralty Law system again. And right, you're right. The fact that Cecil Rhodes left his money to train world leaders, like you'll notice that Bill Clinton was president during the time that our country collapsed, because he was a Rhodes scholar, and Rhodes, they were left the money to educate them to bring all of the empires that have left the British Empire, the US, India, to bring all of these back into the fold by the end of the 20th century. So Cecil Rhodes is the face of the City of London. And if you ever read about it, supposedly the British knew nothing about his intent to take over Africa, which is totally, how can he do it? He was using British banks to finance it.
Well, if you're listening to Beverly Rhodes, right, who was obviously Rhodes, she was handled by Patrick Daniel Rhodes, who's her brother-in-law and stepfather in one, right? And he was her handler. So when you're listening to that, and what Beverly was saying was that they sent him, Cecil Rhodes, to then Rhodesia. Okay, Rhodesia. Oh gosh, thank God that's changed. Seriously. And because he was so abysmal when it came to being a PDF file, and because he was so gross with underage, it's like they couldn't handle him. Not that they couldn't manage him, control him. So they sent him to Africa. And I tell you, no one, if you find one African person who even thinks Cecil John Rhodes is remotely nice, that's very unusual.
Well, the leading classes, I learned about this when I lived in Europe, they are called remittance men. So when wealthy families had men who were controversial, who pedophiles, who whatever, they would send them out to Australia or to Africa, and they were called remittance men, and their family would literally pay them to stay away, but they would have enough money to go down and buy their way wherever they were in other countries. And so they would get away with it down there. And that's exactly what we're seeing, is the remittance men have always been the ones that even the British didn't want. When Europe and Britain would expel people, they would send them to the US. And if they were so atrocious, if they were murderers, if they were these terrible people, why are they relocating them to the United States? Because these people are actually part of the system, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they claim they don't know what they're doing, but they do know what they're doing, is my opinion.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I've not heard about the term remittance men before, but it makes such perfect sense what you're saying. And that's why when you said that, just like ding, 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 a whole lot of little lights went on in my head. And it's infuriating, actually, to think about how they've done that. And, again, I say, are we now surprised that the African people feel the way they do about the white people? And unfortunately, yes, we all often get painted with the same brush, in terms of that, because there's, really, when you're looking at the repopulation of the earth at the end of the 1800s with the mud floods and the designer babies, we've got to understand those are mostly Caucasians. And the thing is, the black people know this, actually. They do. And we've got to, how does one actually, I know this might be a bit off topic and maybe a show on its own, but how does one actually reconcile after such hectic? And when we talk about Epstein, because that face has been so responsible for the disgusting eugenics and vaccine injury and jab testing. I mean, I can only talk for this continent. I've seen, right? So how does one even begin to reconcile that?
Well, one of the things that we have to realize, the City of London is a vassal of the Vatican. So they're recapturing the Roman Empire. Remember how I told you before, Africanus is actually the name of a Roman general who captured Africa for the Romans. And the true name of South Africa is Alkebulan, or Africa itself. And that meant the Garden of Eden. So they knew exactly who they were attacking. They knew exactly, and as you have explained before, all of the things they did in World War I and World War II were first practiced down there. And again, I don't think that was anything new. That was the practice of the Romans who went around the world and captured and enslaved everybody. Like if you wanted to keep your land under the Roman Empire and you were a landowner and somewhere, you would have to give your oldest child to become a sex slave because they knew it would destroy the line, because these perversions, especially before the child is 5, destroys their mind in many instances. So again, this goes way back to Ra. I don't know if you're familiar with Egyptian, because if you look at both the Catholic Church and all this, when you really, really go back, it's all based on this ancient Egyptian stuff. And that's why they always have the pyramids everywhere. And that's why they always have this Egyptian. Everybody from Katy Perry to Madonna has done an Egyptian Cleopatra show, right? And here in the United States, we learned that Cleopatra committed suicide after she lost the battles. But if you live in Mexico, you learn that Cleopatra, it was her maidservant that committed suicide, and Cleopatra sailed with 5 ships to Zihuatanejo, Mexico, and married the king of Mexico. So history is dramatically different anywhere we go. And you were asking about Cecil Rhodes, and I believe he was just an agent of the crown who also grew up in the system that I'm explaining to you. And pedophilia is one of the ways you destroy a child's mind and their consciousness. And I'm not blaming the children by saying this, but this is a planned, right? This is what you've talked about with Jesse, splitting their personalities, splitting their minds. And again, this is one.
And unfortunately, those children don't remain children. They grow up into psychopaths and people, men and women who have lost the empathy gene, basically.
Cecil Rhodes, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, all the people we're talking about today. And when you start looking, if you look into even Leon Black, he's one of the biggest hedge fund, his father flew out the window of the Pan Am building. What was the Pan Am? Was government pansexual. They were having the airplanes that were flying the children in the secret compartments all over the world. It was a CIA operation. So these things, this is the darkness that enveloped Europe and why all of our ancestors left. And when they started running out of people in Europe, they had to start attacking the people in the rest of the world, because it's the brain drain, because everybody leaves, but there's nowhere to go. People today ask me, where can we go to get away from this? How can we be safe? How can we protect our assets? I'm like, there's nowhere to go. It's everywhere. We have to stand where we are and fight because it's everywhere. There is nowhere to run. And the poorest countries in the world, you think, oh, they're safe, but they're the most controlled. That's why they're the poorest countries. Because someone's robbing the country and oppressing the people and taking what they have. So again, Roman.
Our president, Ramaphosa, we call him Cupcake. He was recently caught with something like $500,000 under his couch or in his couch somewhere. I mean, it's a national joke, okay? I mean, you must see the memes going around. It's hilarious, actually. Anyway, are you there?
Well, and again, there's these too. In front of us, Xi Jinping, Donald Trump, head of France, they're very low on the real system we live in. We know people. That's the scariest thing. A lot of people say nothing's going on in this worldwide effort to bring these people down. We can watch what's happened to the Rothschilds, but we don't know who the top people are. So they have all been arrested 10 years ago, but we wouldn't know because we're watching this play out. And every day I see people changing things. I go to a lot of different events. I have a lot of people like you writing me notes. Some people disagreeing with me, some people agreeing with me. But the word is getting out, and trying to talk to people about.
Oh my. You all are just stuck with me now. I was wondering if that was my internet again, because as you all know, 90% of the time, I've... Okay, can you hear me? 90% of the time, it's me that's guilty of internet. But I was losing contact with Simone. Can you guys hear me? If someone just in the chat can confirm, if you say you're losing the audio, is that my audio you're losing? Okay, thank you, honey. All right, I'm just going to see if Simona will pop back on again. But wow, this is so interesting what she's saying, right? Yeah, sorry guys, I want to just see if I can grab her quickly, or if she's trying to get hold of me on the WhatsApp. I don't know if she can get back on again. So just sorry, give me a minute, a New York minute. Coming on. Yeah, she was wavering a bit, unfortunately. But I thought it was my internet that was actually doing that. And but I know that she's in a place where she has to move around as well. But otherwise, I'll just give it a few more minutes, and I'll see whether she's going to join us or if we are going to wrap it up for the day. So yeah, or some can't tolerate the truth. That's absolutely true. And you know, this really is a time for that, right? I mean, I'm just finding that more and more. The universe, God, whatever you call it, whatever you choose to name the great divine force, is certainly making sure that we are coming into alignment. You know, we have choices now. Are we in truth this way or that way? If there's one thing I've realized about this great flood that I've just recently experienced, it was probably that. Wow, that was wild. I'm still coming down from that, I have to tell you. You know, when you sit and the trees are flat and these gusts of winds come up and you can just hear trees around you falling. And I cannot get to my mom and I can see her panicking. Wow, 2 days we had that. And just with this crazy wind and these gusts coming. And listen to this. The power went off the second time at 9:11. And what do we know about 9/11, right? False flag, biggest false flag ever. And when that happened, my spirit knew we were under attack here. And it came on at 4:20 on Saturday, and which was amazing because if any of you have been watching the protective patterning series that I do, I talk about riding the rim. The coin has 3 sides, right? The third, not 2. The third side is the rim. And so there's 2 sides of the same coin. And when I was living in Thailand, my friend Olav and I used to take our wheelies at 4:20, and we used to go ride the rim. And that for me was such a understanding of the balance coming in, the 2 sides together, because this is chief child transportation area. So yeah, things are moving and shaking all across the world, it seems. And we were just talking about Africa and what happens here with the trafficking and the British Crown and what have you. But anyway, I don't think Simone's going to come back on again, guys and girls. Let me just see. Doesn't look like it. But I think we've kind of wrapped up. And I know we are going to do a second part of the series next week as well. So please join us for that. And in the meantime, I'm going to wish you farewell. I will see you tomorrow for the protection patterning series. We're talking about the avoidant loop. How many of you are avoidance and therefore connect with avoidance? Because it can't be any other way, right? So join me at 4:00 tomorrow afternoon, my time, which is 2 hours earlier than now, wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you then and talk about how you can undo the protective patterns we created for yourself. Okay, guys. Yeah, she is. She is a national treasure. She's brilliant. And if you guys haven't caught my previous shows with Simone, please do so. She is a wealth of information. And also Monday's show, the recording that we just had on earlier. And yeah, there is a playlist on Aquarius Rising Africa. Yeah, sorry to have lost Simone. Thanks for putting up with my nattering. And I will see you tomorrow. Take good care, all you beautiful people. Mwah.